We want to, I guess, have a showdown. A couple of nice guys going at it. Ralph Nader was on this program last week talking about how Wall Street is calling all the shots in Washington. He says Obama's economic team is turning a blind eye to risky practices and that lawmakers are failing to protect consumers. Mr. Nader had some pretty tough words for Democratic leaders, especially House Financial Services Chairman Barney Frank.
Barney Frank is shredding this proposal that Obama says he wants. And it doesn't look as it's going to be any better under Senator Dodd.
Can I get you on with Mr. Nader? Can I get you on with Barney Frank later this week or maybe next week? I'd like you two to go at it on this because the American people think, hey, reform is on the way. The House is all excited that this is going to happen.
Of course.
Well, we called Chairman Frank's office. He jumped at the chance to come on and debate Mr. Nader about the issues Wall Street versus Main Street and what the Democrats are doing to get us out of this economic ditch. Let's get right to it. Joining me now are Congressman Barney Frank, Chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, and Mr. Ralph Nader, former presidential candidate, consumer advocate, and author of the book, quote, Only the Super Rich Can Save Us. Congressman, we'll start with you first tonight. Thanks for joining us. I want you to respond to the soundbite that Mr. Nader produced for us the other night. He flat out said that you're not delivering the mail, and you're really going after and tearing apart and shredding apart, is the word he used, what President Obama wants. What do you think about that?
Well, it's exactly wrong. In fact, we've been working very closely with the Treasury and other people in the Obama administration on the consumer protection bill. And I'm very proud that Elizabeth Warren, who I think has become the leading consumer advocate in America in a number of areas, when the bill passed, said, you know, they told me not to push for this because the banks always win, but they didn't win today. In fact, Mr. Nader is exactly wrong. We did not shred the Obama proposal. There were some weaknesses in the drafting, and there were some problems that we encountered in terms of getting it passed. What we passed on Thursday out of our committee on an almost straight party line vote, because we had overwhelming Republican opposition, was the strongest consumer protection agency, the first consumer protection agency in the financial area that we've had. And as I said, no, the Obama administration worked with us closely. We lost one or two issues. We lost on the auto dealers because they are the objects of sympathy now.
Okay.
I was working closely with the Obama people on that. So the assertion that we shredded the Obama proposal, nobody in the Obama administration thinks that. They were working with us very closely.
What about that, Mr. Nader? You used the word shredding what President Obama wants. What's your response to Mr. Congressman Barney Frank there?
Well, it really is a matter of expectation levels, obviously. Barney Frank looks at it one way, I look at it another. I don't think there should have been federal preemption of the states in this consumer financial regulatory area. I don't think there should have been so many exemptions. He seems to agree on the auto dealers that there shouldn't have been an exemption. I think there should have been a shift of power. Congressman Schumer, when he was in the House Banking Committee 1985, proposed a financial consumer association, which I've tried to get to the attention of Chairman Frank, which would allow millions of consumers voluntarily to send contributions to their own nonprofit financial consumer organizations so they can create a counter lobby to the big bank lobby. And also, there was no civil right of action. That is, consumers could not invoke the regulations of this agency if the agency was not enforcing the law to go to court as a civil right of action. Now, none of these cost much money.
First of all, understand that Mr. Nader has just totally retracted implicitly his accusation that I shredded the Obama plan, which was wrong, and I worked closely with the Obama people every step of the way on this. As to the specifics, I know he has for some time now been interested in this consumer association. It doesn't have a lot of support, certainly not from the Obama administration, not from others in the consumer movement. Finally, well, not finally, but additionally, no, the Obama administration didn't ask for a private right of action, but here's what we did do. We gave the state attorneys general and the state banking commissioners the right to enforce this over the great objection of the banks. Mr. Nader, I saw somewhere said, oh, the banks are celebrating. No, the American Bankers Association denounced this. We lost every Republican but one. It's a very strong pro-consumer bill. Now, on preemption, it is true. We could not get total preemption. What we did do in this bill is to roll back significantly where we are today. In 2004, a Bill Clinton holdover under the Bush administration promulgated a sweeping preemption of all state bank laws.
Yeah.
We have rolled that back to where we were in 2004, and they can only preempt a state banking law or regulation if it can be shown seriously to interfere with national banking, i.e. if it's not uniform.
All right, gentlemen, I want to talk about Glass-Steagall. Now, Mr. Nader, are you in favor of the reinstatement of Glass-Steagall? Would that fix what has happened a year ago on Wall Street?
Well, I agree with former Chairman of the Federal Reserve, Paul Volcker, who wants to separate commercial banking from retail banking so that the risky part of investment banking, using your deposits and savings, do not lead to another Wall Street collapse and gigantic bailout. Barney Frank voted against the deregulation in 1999. He voted against it properly, and I can't understand that with Paul Volcker and many others on his side, he doesn't push for that separation. If you don't get that separation, you're going to get with the derivatives, and he's been very weak on derivative reform.
What about that, Mr. Frank?
Very weak.
Well, you notice, I'm sorry, but Mr. Nader keeps shifting his ground, and I know he's still pining for that Consumer Association. The fact is that on Glass-Steagall, the two things. Restoring Glass-Steagall, and I did vote against it, and I thought it was a mistake, but unfortunately, restoring it wouldn't solve the great majority of the problems. What I plan to do is this. I plan to offer an amendment to the administration's bill.
Wait a minute now. Hold on. You mean to tell me it would not have prevented what happened if Glass-Steagall?
No, because, for instance, AIG, which was a major cause of the problem with these unregulated derivatives, they would not have been affected by Glass-Steagall. They were not a bank and an investment house. You had some of the most irresponsible activities done by people that were purely investment houses. Yeah. AIG would not have been stopped by Glass-Steagall. Lehman Brothers wouldn't have been stopped. That doesn't make it wrong, but there are broader things. I believe, by the way, the biggest single problem we've had, which I hope to resolve in this bill, is 30 years ago, if you got a loan, you had to pay back the person who lent it to you. And we had real scrutiny about who borrowed money. They then came up with securitization, where people made a whole bunch of loans and then sold the whole loan. We're going to put in there a risk retention, like with insurance, where you can't reinsure
go along with
everything.
that, wouldn't you, Mr. Nader?
That's good. The question is, how much, what percentage is the risk retention?
I want to start with 10% and give the regulators a chance to go up or down. If it's a straight 30-year mortgage at a fixed rate, you might need less.
All right,
if it's more speculative, you go up. But on Glass-Steagall, what I plan to do is to give the regulators the ability to impose Glass-Steagall institution by institution where there is reason to think that there's a problem.
All right. Mr. Frank, I want to ask you, because a lot of Americans have communicated with us on our radio show and here on the Ed Show that they're upset about the pay bonuses to the executive.
Absolutely. They should be.
Well, why wasn't there any oversight to that before the money went out? And there was? I mean, you forked out billions of dollars to Wall Street, and they went off and did the same thing that they had done before.
The problem is that we had the Bush administration in power. If you will notice, now that we have the Obama administration under Ken Feinberg, very tough rules have been imposed. And by the way, let me give some credit to Senator Chris Dodd, who's been very unfairly attacked by a lot of people. He is the one who authored in the economic stimulus bill the provision that was the charter for Ken Feinberg to do what he did. What we've done in the House, and we did this in August, and we tried to do it before, we've done two things. First of all, what we call say on pay. For every public company, we believe the shareholders ought to have a chance to express their opinion on pay, and we believe that will have a very severe effect.
But this money went out to Wall Street, Mr. Nader.
I'm trying to respond.
You responded to it.
No, I didn't get to the full question, because we also passed a law for the companies in every company on Wall Street to require the regulators to restrict bonuses, so you don't have this crazy situation where it's heads they win and tails they break even, where they take risks. If the risks pay off, they got all the money.
All right, Mr. Nader, are you satisfied with that answer?
First of all, giving shareholders non-binding authority on gigantic executive bonuses won't work. He should give he should give shareholders binding authority, and the shareholders should have in these giant companies a small staff so they can take on the executives. And that's one. And then the second thing that's really important here is on the derivatives. These are bets on bets on bets. There was $600 trillion changed hands last year. Volcker and a lot of others who know quite a bit about banking think that they should be not only better regulated, but the commercial banks should not be trading on their account using deposit and savings accounts of the American people. But the important thing is, and this is where I think Barney is the weakest, in 2000 2000, he voted for a bill that continued the deregulation of the burgeoning derivative racket. And now he's supporting a bill that has a huge loophole in terms of exempting trillions of dollars of certain categories of derivatives, number one. And he hasn't, don't interrupt so much, Barney.
All right, Mr. Nader, let him respond to that.
And the other is, he didn't support a categorical ban on abusive derivatives.
Quickly respond to that, Barney.
Well, first of all, I think, Ralph gets to luxuriate in the purity of his irrelevance. We're in there fighting these things. I had overwhelming Republican opposition to any regulation of derivatives and some Democrats, and we fought hard for it. We are establishing a great framework for the regulation of derivatives. We are moving forward in that, and we've done as much as we can politically, but the fact is that we have a political situation, and I tell you, here's the real irony of this, Ed. The right wing took control of government and ruined it. They gave it a bad reputation. Now that we are trying in every front to increase the role of government in the regulatory area, we run into this public opinion that says, hey, those are the guys who screwed up Katrina. So the frustration is they're benefiting from their own incompetence.
All right, gentlemen.